Welcome to the Igniting the CEO Within podcast, where we interview successful, high-level professionals to discover lessons they've learned throughout their career that can help ignite that CEO within you. I'm Mark McFatridge, and I'll be your host for the next 15 minutes or so. Our show is sponsored by Quaid, a nationwide community of CEOs and entrepreneurs. Quaid has developed Launchpad, which offers an opportunity for experienced executive coaches to become licensed circle directors. After completing the Launchpad program, you'll lead your own peer advisory circles, helping other CEOs and entrepreneurs excel in their professional and personal lives while providing a community of support, accountability, and challenge. If you'd like to learn more, go to quaidcircle.com. On our show today, we have Ron Fredman from Olathe, Kansas. Ron, you've had exposure to so many leaders over the course of your amazing career. Some of those leaders were incredible and maybe some not so incredible. If you were to look and try to identify one or two traits that would separate the really great leaders from the not so great leaders, what would that be?
I think the most important thing that I have learned on both sides of the equation is that a good leader is somebody who cares, who listens, who respects, and who treats those they are working with as equals and as partners, not as tools that can be thrown away. The best leaders are those who motivate, who reward, who are there to publicly praise, quietly coach, and to try to get the best out of everybody. Because the reality is that in any situation that you're leading, it is not you simply giving dictates to others. It is a team that is working together. It reminds me of a story. This was many years ago when I was leading the fundraising efforts for the Kansas City Ballet. I'm still involved with the ballet as a member of their board, actually, but I was on staff at the time. And one of the people in my department came to me and said, Ron, I'm not out in the field raising funds. She was on support staff. And I just don't feel like I'm contributing as much as those of you who are out bringing in the $5,000, the $10,000, the $100,000 gifts. And I said, sit down, Marie. And we had a chat. And of course, I always kept my door. I always told the staff, I have an open door policy. My door is always open unless it's closed. So it was open. She walked in. And I said, I hear what you say. Good leadership skills, listen, respect, feedback. Then I took off my watch, and it's actually by coincidence the same watch I'm wearing today. One my dad's watch from the 1950s. And I said, see this watch on the back, if I were to take the back off, we'd find all sorts of gears and wheels and springs and things, right? And she nodded and said yes. And I said, some are going to be bigger than others, some are going to be small, some might be one color, some might be another. And she said yes. And then I looked at her and I said, which one's more important? And her face kind of went blank for a second. She said, well, they're all important, aren't they? And I said, bingo. That is the key, because if any of those gears stops working, the watch doesn't work, does it? So you can't ever tell me you're not just as important as I am, because without you, we don't succeed. And that, to me, is really encompasses an awful lot of who I have been and continue to be as a leader. And, I've also been a Scoutmaster for 45 years, which is kind of hard to believe, but 45 years is a lot of campouts, where I'm dealing with young men from the ages of 11 to 18, and then many of them stick around into college and beyond as well, which has been very rewarding. Just last night, we had a troop meeting, and I was visiting with our senior patrol leader, who is the boy selected by his peers to be the leader of the troop. And he came to me off to the side during an activity and said, Mr. Fredman, I am a little concerned that I'm not a successful leader. I'm not a good leader. I've had this conversation with almost every senior patrol leader over the last 45 years. I respect that. And we were talking about what it takes to be a leader. And I gave him almost the exact same presentation that I just gave you. The idea that you set positive examples, that you encourage, that you reward, that you motivate, and that the example you set will be the one they follow, good, bad, or indifferent. And we talked a little bit more about how this can define who he is, and he left with a thank you. And I said to myself, it's going to be okay. Interestingly, a couple days earlier, I was at another scouting event where we were leading some brand new kids into their first steps into scouts, and we talked a bit about leadership as well. And we had a pretty much a similar discussion where they set examples, and people will follow them, good or bad. And as they mature, they will learn more and succeed more. But for now, they are doing the best they can. And that's always the key to not expect perfection, because goodness, if you're expecting perfection, you're never going to get there. I'm
Yep.
never going to get there. No one's going to get there. But if you give people a chance to do their very best, then they will be successful in life. And then the job of a leader is to give them the tools, the knowledge, and the permission to succeed, and then get out of their way and let them do it. The
Mhm.
tools are the basics. These are the things that you need in order to do your job, whether they are physical tools like a hammer, or they are mental tools such as how do you do math, or how do you put words together on a piece of paper, how do you motivate folks. So there's the tools. Then the knowledge is how do you use those in their basic intended ways? How do you use those in creative ways? So they have the tools, the knowledge, and then the last step, which is the most difficult, is permission. And permission is twofold. One, the institution or the leader gives them permission to succeed, and also gives them permission to try and not succeed if they learn from that. And then the last and the most difficult step is that they have to give it to themselves. If you've given them the tools and the knowledge and the permission, if you support what they're doing, create a team supportive environment, the odds are pretty good that they will feel good enough about themselves to succeed. If they have doubts, as this gentleman yesterday had, then the leader has to be there to encourage, to listen, to give them guidance, and to support them as they move towards success. Because if they don't succeed, I don't succeed. That's as true for dealing with kids as it was dealing with my staff, as it is dealing with the board of directors for a couple of boards that I lead. It's all the same thing, is give people a chance to succeed, give them the ability to succeed, motivate, encourage, reward, and then let them do their job.
Ron, I love that answer, agree with 100% of it.
Good, thank
Here's
you.
here's my question for you, and
Yeah.
and, and you're doing an amazing job of being a mentor to the people that you've led, and with your volunteerism and working with the scouts and that type of thing.
Mhm.
How do people learn that if they're not so lucky to have a mentor like you?
Hopefully, at some point in their career, they have seen someone who has set a good example. That's what I tell the people I'm working with, again, adults or children, is find somebody who you think is doing a good job and watch them and learn from them. And at the same time, especially on the volunteer side, find your passion. I can't you can't walk up to me and say, "Hey, I'd like to be involved," and then I assign you something. If you couldn't care less about it is what it is I'm assigning. It's what I tell people when they're new to an organization. Tell me what you care about, and we'll find a way to make it work. And then who do you think is setting a good example and why?
Mhm.
And maybe you can pick up some of their traits. Of course, in asking those questions, I am in fact mentoring them.
Right.
So if they have no mentor, they almost have to stumble onto a role model. And around you, where there are all sorts of role models through school, through work, through church, and through life in general. And I think that inherently we will follow others. It's just a question of what choices we make over who we follow. Sometimes peer pressure forces people to follow in the wrong direction. Hopefully, stronger pressure will get them back on the right path. But we always are able to emulate those we care about, who we agree with. And sometimes the hard part is to emulate those we disagree with because they might have a better way of doing things, only if we're not stubborn enough so that we can watch.
Yeah, that's great. I think that, said slightly differently is you can learn from anywhere, right? As long as you have your
Yes,
antennas up, you can learn what to do, you can learn what not to do.
exactly.
And as long as you keep, I call it pocketing those experiences. So when you're in those situations, you can figure out, what works for you and make it yourself. But yeah, keeping your antennas up makes a whole lot of difference, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, in a sense, it's almost like a corporate brand. I would always argue that a brand is not a logo or a slogan, but a brand is the sum of experiences. Reputation then becomes experience expressed. So, in a sense, we all are our own brand, and we all are the sum of our experiences. And then how others react to us, it becomes how they respond to who we have become because of where we've been and what our value system is and what matters to us.
I love that. I love that.
Good, thank
Hey,
you.
hey, as we start to wrap this up, one of the questions that I've really enjoyed asking our guests is, if you were to look back at 21-year-old Ron, what is one thing that you wish he knew that you had to learn over the course of these years?
Oh, geez, 21-year-old, that's a long time ago. Um, that's way last century. I think what 21-year-old Ron did not understand is the value of patience and the value of perspective. You gain perspective after you've lived it. When you're 21, then the world is in front of you. You have your own view of things, and sometimes your own impatience or your own focus. When you hit the retirement age or even the middle ages, you begin to understand that there are things that now make sense and that you can change who you are and be reflective of the world around you rather than trying to change the world to satisfy yourself.
That's amazing. Great. That that
Thank you.
that is so good. Thank you to Ron Fredman for joining us. It's great to always have somebody with his experience to share his insights and wisdom with us. So, Ron, thanks so much for joining us. As we wrap up, I want to remind you that Igniting the CEO Within is sponsored by Quaid, a nationwide community of CEOs and entrepreneurs. Quaid has created Launchpad, which provides an opportunity for experienced executive coaches to become licensed circle directors and significantly impact the lives of CEOs and entrepreneurs. To find out more, visit quaidcircle.com. Until next time, keep igniting that CEO within you. I'm Mark McFatridge. Thanks for listening.